Marcus Kane wiped the sweat from his forehead as he adjusted the scanner readings on his salvaged ship's control panel. 3 months of deep space scavenging had yielded nothing but scrap metal and broken dreams. His bank account was running as dry as the coffee maker that had given up the ghost 2 weeks ago. The Wanderer wasn't much to look at, but she was home, and right now, she was his only hope of avoiding bankruptcy. The proximity alarm chimed, breaking through the monotonous hum of the life support systems. Marcus leaned forward, squinting at the display. A massive structure floated in the void ahead, its angular design unlike anything he'd seen in his 15 years of salvaging. The ship, if it was a ship stretched for kilometers, its hull a deep purple that seemed to absorb the starlight around it. Strange symbols pulsed along its surface in rhythmic patterns that made his eyes water if he stared too long. "Well, that's new," Marcus muttered, running his fingers through his unkempt brown hair. The scanner indicated the vessel was operational but not moving. No response to his standard hails either. In the salvage business, that usually meant one of two things. The crew was dead, or they were hiding. Given the size of this thing, Marcus hoped it was the former. He guided the Wanderer closer, noting the intricate details of the alien craft's construction. The technology was clearly advanced, far beyond anything Earth's colonies had developed. The hull showed no signs of battle damage or decay. Whatever had stopped this ship, it wasn't pirates or mechanical failure. That should have been his first warning to turn around. As Marcus prepared to dock, his communications array crackled to life. A voice emerged from the static, speaking in a language he'd never heard before. The words were melodic, almost musical, but tinged with something that made his chest tighten. Fear, desperation, the universal translator, struggled with the alien syntax, providing only fragments. Help. Trapped. Dying. Dying. Died. The voice belonged to a woman, he was certain of that much. Several women, actually, as more voices joined the transmission. They spoke over each other in their musical language, the desperation in their tones growing stronger. Marcus found himself reaching for the docking controls before his rational mind caught up. "This is Marcus Kane aboard the salvage vessel Wanderer," he broadcast back. "I'm receiving your transmission. Are you in distress?" The alien voices fell silent for a moment. Then one spoke again, this time in heavily accented but understandable English. "Human? You would help us? Your kind, your species is known for many things. But kindness to strangers is not among them." Marcus bristled at that. Sure, humanity had its problems, but they weren't monsters. "Lady, I don't know what you've heard about humans, but I'm not about to leave anyone stranded in deep space. What's your situation?" "We are prisoners," came the reply. "Our ship was taken by the hegemony. They killed our males, took our young, and left us here to serve their appetites. We have been trapped for 3 rotations. They return soon for another selection." The translation came through clearly enough, but Marcus felt like he was missing something important. "The hegemony? Never heard of them. How many of you are there?" 47 of us remain. "But human, you must understand the hegemony controls this sector. They have warships, weapons beyond your comprehension. If they find you here—" "One problem at a time," Marcus interrupted, guiding his ship toward what looked like a docking bay. "First, let's get you out of there." The alien woman's voice carried a note of disbelief. "You would risk yourself for strangers? For aliens? This makes no sense to us." Marcus couldn't help but smile grimly. "Welcome to humanity, sweetheart. We don't always make sense, but we get the job done." As the Wanderer slipped into the alien vessel's docking bay, Marcus got his first good look at the ship's interior. The technology was beautiful in its complexity, all flowing curves and crystalline structures that pulsed with soft bioluminescent light. But there were signs of violence everywhere, scorch marks on the walls, broken panels, and what looked like dried blood spattered across the pristine surfaces. He sealed the airlock and checked. His sidearm, an old-fashioned projectile weapon that had served him well in the rougher parts of space. The atmospheric readings showed the ship had a breathable environment. though the composition was slightly different from Earth normal. Rich in oxygen with trace elements he didn't recognize, the inner airlock door hissed open, and Marcus stepped into a world unlike anything he'd ever imagined. The corridor stretched away in both directions, its walls alive with shifting patterns of light. But it wasn't the architecture that stopped him cold, it was the woman standing before him. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that seemed to shimmer between blue and silver depending on the light. Her hair, if it could be called hair, flowed like liquid mercury down to her shoulders. Her eyes were large and luminous, colored a deep violet that seemed to hold the depths of space itself. She was unmistakably feminine in form, though more elegant and elongated than any human woman, but what struck Marcus most was the way she looked at him. Those violet eyes held a mixture of hope and disbelief that made his heart ache. She wore what appeared to be the remnants of an elegant gown, now torn and stained. Behind her he could see other figures, more alien women, all watching him with the same expression of desperate hope. "You came?" she whispered, her voice carrying that same musical quality he'd heard over the radio. "A human actually came to help us." Marcus holstered his weapon and stepped forward. "Name's Marcus Kane, and you are?" "I am Lyra of the Caesarean Fourth House. I speak for my sisters here." She gestured to the women behind her, and Marcus counted at least a dozen visible in the corridor. We never expected rescue." "Certainly not from a human." "Yeah, you keep saying that. What exactly have you heard about my species?" Lyra's expression darkened. "The hegemony speaks of humans as violent primitives. Warmongers who think only of conquest and personal gain. They said no human would risk themselves for aliens without profit." Marcus looked around at the obvious signs of violence and captivity. "Well, the hegemony sounds like a bunch of jackasses. Now, how do we get you all out of here before they come back?" For the first time since he'd arrived, Lyra smiled. It was a beautiful expression that seemed to light up the corridor around them. "Perhaps," she said softly, "the hegemony does not understand humans as well as they believe." Marcus checked his chronometer and frowned. If these hegemony bastards were coming back soon, they needed to move fast. "How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe less," Lyra replied. "But Marcus Kane of the humans, there is something you must know. Our ship, it cannot be moved. The hegemony damaged our engines beyond repair. And your vessel? It is too small to carry us all." Marcus studied the alien woman's face, seeing the pain she was trying to hide. "Then we'd better get creative. First rule of salvage work, there's always another way." Marcus followed Lyra deeper into the alien vessel, his boots echoing strangely in the curved corridors. The other Caesarean women pressed themselves against the walls as he passed, their luminous eyes tracking his every movement. Some whispered to each other in their musical language, and he caught fragments through the translator. "So small, primitive weapons. How can he help us?" He tried not to take offense. Compared to these elegant beings, he probably did look like a barbarian. His jumpsuit was patched and stained, his equipment old and functional rather than beautiful. But Marcus had learned long ago that in the depths of space, ugly and reliable beat pretty and broken every time. "Tell me about this ship," he said as they walked. "What kind of defenses does it have? Weapons? Shields?" Lyra's expression grew pained. "We are explorers and scholars, Marcus Kane. Our vessel was designed for long-range research, not war. We have basic shields, but no weapons beyond ceremonial pieces. When the hegemony attacked," she gestured helplessly, "our males fought with scientific instruments and survey tools. They died bravely, but they were no match for trained warriors. They entered what Marcus assumed was the ship's main common area. It was a vast circular chamber with a domed ceiling that showed the stars beyond through some kind of transparent material. Cushioned alcoves lined the walls, and in the center, a holographic display showed star charts and what looked like archaeological data. But the beauty of the space was marred by the obvious signs of violence and occupation. 46 more Caesarean women filled the chamber, and Marcus felt their collective gaze like a physical weight. They were all tall and elegant like Lyra, but he noticed differences among them. Some had skin that shifted between green and gold, others showed patterns of silver and deep blue. Their hair ranged from the liquid mercury he'd first seen to something that looked like flowing starlight. One of them, her skin a deep emerald that reminded Marcus of Earth's oceans, stepped forward. "Sister Lyra, why do you bring the human here? The hegemony will return soon. If they find him—" "Peace, Zara," Lyra said gently. "Marcus Kane has come to help us." Zara's laugh was bitter. "Help? Look at him, sister. He carries primitive projectile weapons and flies in a craft barely larger than our escape pods. What can one human do against the hegemony fleet?" Marcus cleared his throat. "With respect, ma'am, I've been underestimated before. Usually works out in my favor. Now, I need to understand what we're dealing with. Tell me about these hegemony folks?" An older Caesarean with silver skin and hair like spun starlight spoke from one of the alcoves. "The hegemony is an alliance of warrior species. They conquer and enslave, taking what they desire from the worlds they capture. They value only strength and submission." "And they're coming back for more of you?" Marcus said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Lyra confirmed quietly. "They take 5 of us each time. For their ... entertainment. Those who resist are killed as examples to the others." Marcus felt something cold and hard settle in his stomach. He'd seen slavers before, had even fought them a few times when they got too close to the shipping lanes. But something about the way these women spoke, the fear in their voices mixed with resigned despair, made his hands clench into fists. "How many ships are we talking about?" 3 patrol vessels, Lyra said. "Perhaps 60 warriors in total. Their ships are small but heavily armed and shielded. Our scientists estimate their weapons could destroy your vessel in seconds." Marcus walked to the center of the chamber, studying the holographic display. The star charts showed their current location relative to several solar systems, including a few he recognized from his salvage routes. "What's your ship's power situation?" "Life support and basic systems only," replied Zara. "The hegemony destroyed our main reactors to prevent us from escaping. But the auxiliary power is intact?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, but it cannot power engines or weapons." Marcus smiled for the first time since boarding their ship. "Good, I don't need weapons or engines. I need lights and attitude control. Can you access your ship's technical specifications?" The Caesarean women exchanged glances. Another of their number, this one with skin that shifted between purple and gold, approached the holographic display. Her fingers danced over controls that seemed to respond to touch and thought simultaneously. "I am Vess, chief engineer of this expedition. What do you require?" "Everything about your hull composition, structural integrity, and internal systems. Also, I need to know about those symbols on your outer hull, the ones that pulse with light." "Those are ceremonial navigation markers," Vess explained as data began flowing across the display. "They indicate our house affiliation and research credentials." "Why do you—" She stopped, studying Marcus's face. "You have an idea." "I have several ideas. Most of them are crazy." Marcus pulled out a small datapad and began taking notes as he studied the Caesarean ship's specifications. "Your hull is made of biometallic compounds, self-repairing and incredibly strong. Your ship mass is about 50 times what my salvage vessel does." "Yes," Vess said slowly. "But without engines, ... Who needs engines when you have 47 brilliant alien women and 1 stubborn human?" Marcus looked around the chamber, meeting each pair of luminous eyes. "Ladies, I'm going to ask something of you that's going to sound insane. But I need to know, how much do you trust me?" Lyra stepped closer. "Marcus Kane, we barely know you." "You appeared from nowhere, claiming you wish to help us escape certain death. By any logical measure, we should not trust you at all, but—" Marcus prompted. "But," Lyra continued, "you came when no one else would. You entered our ship knowing the hegemony might return. You carry yourself like a warrior, yet you ask our permission before acting." She looked to her sisters, and Marcus saw small nods throughout the chamber. "We choose to trust the human who dared to rescue us." Marcus felt an unexpected warmth in his chest. "All right, then. Here's what we're going to do. Those hegemony bastards think they're coming back to a ship full of helpless prisoners. Instead, they're going to find something that'll make them wish they'd never heard of humans. What do you mean? Asked Zara, though her hostility had been replaced by curiosity. I mean, we're going to turn your research vessel into the biggest, nastiest surprise this sector has ever seen. But first, I need to get some equipment from my ship, and you all need to help me understand exactly how your technology works. Marcus started toward the corridor, then paused. Oh, and ladies? When the hegemony shows up, I need you all to act scared and helpless. Think you can manage that? For the first time since he'd arrived, several of the Caesarean women actually laughed. The sound was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Human, said Lyra with amusement in her voice, we have been prisoners for 3 rotations. Acting helpless has become second nature. Good, Marcus replied, because what I have in mind is going to require the performance of a lifetime. As he headed back toward his ship, Marcus could hear the women talking excitedly among themselves. For the first time in days, their voices carried hope instead of despair. He just hoped his crazy plan would work, because if it didn't, they'd all be dead in a few hours. Marcus spent the next hour pulling apart half his salvage ship systems. The Wanderer might not look like much, but she was packed with equipment he'd accumulated over years of deep space scavenging. Plasma cutters, gravitational field generators, jury-rigged shield amplifiers, and most importantly, a collection of improvised weapons that would make a weapons inspector cry. He loaded everything onto a grav sled and headed back to the Caesarean ship, his mind racing through calculations and possibilities. The plan forming in his head was so crazy it just might work, or get them all killed. In the salvage business, those 2 outcomes were often separated by luck and timing. When he returned to the common chamber, he found the alien women organized into work groups. Vess had apparently taken charge, directing her sisters with the efficiency of someone used to managing complex technical projects. The holographic display now showed detailed schematics of their ship's structure and systems. Show me what you found, Marcus said, setting down his equipment. Vess gestured to the display. Our auxiliary power can support all basic systems indefinitely. The attitude control thrusters are intact, though without main engines we cannot achieve significant velocity. However, she paused, studying Marcus's equipment. These devices you carry, they appear to be military-grade despite their crude construction. Salvage work takes you to dangerous places, Marcus replied. Sometimes you need to convince pirates that your ship isn't worth the trouble. He pointed to one of the devices on his sled. This is a gravitational field generator. Normally used for moving heavy salvage, but it can also create localized distortions in space-time. Lyra approached, her violet eyes studying the equipment with obvious intelligence. You wish to use our ship as a weapon? Not exactly. I want to use your ship as a trap. Marcus activated a portable hologram projector and began sketching out his plan in 3-dimensional light. The hegemony thinks they're coming back to collect more prisoners. Instead, they're going to find their prisoners have vanished, replaced by something impossible. He highlighted sections of the Caesarean ship's hull. Your biometallic hull can be reconfigured, right? It's designed for extended deep space missions, which means it can adapt to different conditions. Within limits, Vess confirmed. But such changes require massive energy inputs and precise control. What do you have in mind? Marcus's hologram shifted, showing the alien ship transformed into something new. Ladies, meet the most terrifying thing in space, a human-modified alien vessel with nothing left to lose. Zara studied the projection with growing understanding. You want to make our ship appear to be something it is not. Exactly. When the hegemony arrives, they're going to see an apparent derelict dead in space. No life signs, just another casualty of their own brutality. They'll come in close to investigate, and that's when we spring our surprise. Marcus began distributing his equipment to different work groups. Vess, I need you and your engineers to reroute power conduits. We're going to channel everything through my field generators. Lyra, I need your people to reconfigure those ceremonial hull markers. Instead of identification, they're going to become targeting systems. Targeting systems? Lyra repeated. Trust me. Zara, you mentioned your people were scholars and researchers. That means you understand physics, right? Theoretical and practical applications? The emerald-skinned woman nodded slowly. Our entire expedition was dedicated to studying gravitational anomalies and subspace phenomena. Perfect. Because we're about to create some phenomena of our own. Marcus activated another device, and suddenly the chamber was filled with the hum of multiple gravitational fields. The hegemony uses strength and fear as weapons. But humans? We use physics. Over the next 2 hours, the Caesarean ship was transformed. The alien women worked with remarkable efficiency, their natural grace and intelligence making them ideal partners for Marcus's improvised engineering. They rerouted power systems, reconfigured hull patterns, and installed his equipment with a precision that would have impressed Earth's best technicians. Marcus found himself constantly amazed by their capabilities. These weren't helpless victims, they were brilliant scientists and engineers who had been caught off guard by a brutal enemy. Given the right tools and leadership, they were formidable. "Human," called Vess from across the chamber, "your gravitational generators are interfacing with our biometallic hull in ways I did not expect. The entire ship is beginning to resonate at quantum frequencies. Is that bad?" asked Lyra with concern. Marcus checked his readings and grinned. "Actually, it's perfect. We're not just building a trap, ladies. We're building a weapon that'll make the hegemony question everything they think they know about physics." As they worked, the Caesarean women began to open up about their culture and their expedition. They were explorers from a peaceful confederation of worlds, dedicated to advancing knowledge and understanding. Their ship had been charting gravitational anomalies when the hegemony patrol had intercepted them. "We thought we could reason with them," Lyra explained as she helped Marcus calibrate a targeting array. "Our people believe that any intelligent species can find common ground through dialogue and mutual respect." "How'd that work out?" Marcus asked, though his tone was sympathetic rather than mocking. "They laughed at our attempts at diplomacy," Zara said bitterly. "Then they killed our males and took our young as slaves. They told us that only strength matters in the galaxy and that our weakness would be purged." Marcus paused in his work, looking around at the faces surrounding him. These beautiful, intelligent beings had been brutalized by thugs who mistook cruelty for strength. It made his blood boil. "Well," he said quietly, "they're about to learn that there are different kinds of strength, and that humans have a special hatred for bullies." A soft chime echoed through the ship, and Vess looked up from her console with alarm. "Long-range sensors detect 3 vessels approaching. The hegemony has returned." Marcus felt the familiar calm that always settled over him before action. "How long?" 20 minutes until they reach scanning range." "Perfect." Marcus activated the final connection in his improvised system, and suddenly the entire ship hummed with barely contained energy. The ceremonial markers on the hull now pulsed in complex patterns, and gravitational fields danced through the ship's structure like living things. "Positions, everyone," Marcus called out. "Remember, when they scan us, you need to appear dead or unconscious. No movement, no energy signatures from your personal devices. As far as they know, their last visit killed the remaining prisoners." Lyra moved to stand beside him. "Marcus Kane, what you have done here, it is beyond our understanding. Our people will speak of this day for generations." "Let's make sure there are generations to speak of it," Marcus replied. He handed her a small device. "When I give the signal, activate this. It'll send a message to every ship in 3 sectors, letting them know what the hegemony has been doing out here. And if your plan fails?" Marcus checked his sidearm one last time. "Then I'll show these hegemony bastards why humans have a reputation for being dangerous when they're cornered." As the alien women took their positions throughout the ship, Marcus felt a strange sense of pride. In the span of a few hours, these remarkable beings had gone from hopeless prisoners to willing conspirators in what was probably the most audacious rescue attempt in galactic history. The hegemony thought they understood humans. They were about to get a very expensive education. The hegemony patrol ships materialized from hyperspace like predators returning to a fresh kill. Marcus watched them through the Caesarian ship's sensors, noting their sleek, aggressive design. Each vessel bristled with weapons and moved with the confident arrogance of apex predators, who had never encountered effective resistance. 3 ships. Just as you said, Marcus whispered to Lyra, who lay motionless on the deck beside him. Around the chamber, the other Caesarian women had arranged themselves in poses of death and unconsciousness, their natural grace making the deception completely convincing. Remember, no matter what you hear, don't move until I give the signal. The lead hegemony ship was larger than the other 2, its hull painted in colors that seemed to shift and crawl across its surface. Marcus had encountered enough alien species to recognize aggressive display patterns when he saw them. These weren't just warriors, they were predators who wanted their victims to know they were coming. His improvised control panel chimed softly. The hegemony ships were beginning their sensor sweep, and Marcus held his breath as the scanning beams played across the Caesarian vessel. According to his readings, the ship appeared exactly as he'd intended, a derelict floating in space. Its life support systems failing, its crew dead or dying, the largest hegemony ship moved closer, and Marcus got his first good look at its design. The vessel was built for intimidation as much as warfare, with hull modifications that resembled teeth or claws. Weapon ports lined its flanks like hungry mouths, and its sensor arrays swept the void with predatory patience. A voice crackled through the communication array, harsh, guttural, speaking a language that made Marcus's skin crawl. The translator struggled with the syntax before producing an approximation. Patrol Leader Vex to subordinate vessels. The prey ship shows no life signs. Prepare boarding parties for salvage operations. Marcus smiled grimly. These bastards were so confident. They weren't even being careful. Good. Overconfidence had killed more predators than any weapon ever invented. The 3 ships moved into a triangular formation around the Caesarian vessel, their scanning beams probing for any signs of life or hidden weapons. Marcus's modifications held perfectly. The biometallic hull absorbed and redirected the sensor beams, creating false readings that showed exactly what the hegemony expected to see got through the ship's external cameras. Marcus watched hegemony boarding pods launch from the patrol ships. The pods were ugly, functional things designed to breach hulls and deliver armed troops quickly. They clamped onto the Caesarian ship's hull with metallic thuds that echoed through the corridors. Boarding parties preparing to enter, came the translated voice of Patrol Leader Vex. Salvage teams. Prepare to collect any surviving specimens. If the females are still alive, bring them to my ship for processing. Marcus felt every muscle in his body tense. The casual way the hegemony leader spoke about the Caesarian women made him want to charge out with guns blazing. But patience was part of the plan. Let them come in confident. Let them think they'd won. The first hegemony warriors entered through the main airlock, and Marcus got his first look at humanity's new enemies. They were tall, nearly 8 feet, with armored hide that looked natural rather than manufactured. Their faces were predatory, with too many teeth and eyes that reflected light like a nocturnal hunter's. They carried energy, weapons that hummed with barely contained. Power, 6 warriors entered the main chamber where Marcus and the Caesarian women waited. Their leader, distinguished by elaborate scarification across his armored hide, surveyed the scene with satisfaction. Dead? Asked one of the subordinates, nudging Zara's motionless form with his boot. Some appear to be, replied the leader in accented English. But look, the human vessel attached to the docking bay. Scan it. Marcus forced himself to remain perfectly still as one of the warriors aimed a scanning device in his direction. The device beeped and clicked, analyzing everything from life signs to genetic markers. When it finished, the warrior looked confused. Leader Thresh, the readings are ... unusual. The craft is human, but it appears to have been modified with technologies I do not recognize. And the human himself. The warrior frowned at his device. His biological readings are within normal parameters, but there are energy signatures I cannot identify. Thresh moved closer to Marcus's position, his predatory gaze studying the apparently unconscious human. So a human came to rescue the females. How pathetic. Their species learns nothing from their defeats. Marcus had to bite his tongue to keep from responding. These bastards were so focused on their own superiority. They couldn't recognize a trap even when they were standing in it. More hegemony warriors poured into the ship, spreading out to search for survivors and valuable technology. Marcus counted at least 20 boarders, with more likely still in their pods. The patrol ships hung outside, their crews probably celebrating another easy victory. "Begin collection of the surviving females," Thresh ordered. "And bring the human to patrol leader Vex. He will want to interrogate this fool personally before execution." 2 warriors approached Marcus, reaching down to grab his arms. This was at the moment when everything would either work perfectly or go catastrophically wrong. Marcus counted silently in his head, waiting for the exact right moment. 3, 2, 1. Marcus's hand slapped the activation, control hidden beneath his body, and the Caesarian ship came alive. Every ceremonial marker on the hull blazed to life simultaneously, creating a network of gravitational field projectors that turned the entire vessel into a massive weapon. The biometallic hull began to resonate, generating harmonic frequencies that interfered with hegemony equipment and caused their energy weapons to malfunction. But the real surprise was what happened. To space itself around the ship, Marcus's gravitational generators, powered by the Caesarian ship's auxiliary reactors and controlled by Vess's brilliant modifications, created localized distortions in the fabric of space-time. Suddenly, the 3 hegemony patrol ships found themselves caught in gravitational fields that twisted and pulled at their hulls like invisible hands. "What is happening?" Thresh demanded, his weapon sparking and dying in his hands. Around the chamber, his warriors stumbled as artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Marcus rolled to his feet, his projectile weapon appearing in his hand as if by magic. Unlike energy weapons, it was completely unaffected by the gravitational chaos filling the ship. "What's happening is that you picked on the wrong species, ugly." The first shot took Thresh center mass, the impact spinning him around and sending him crashing into the wall. The second and third shots dropped the 2 warriors who had been reaching for him. Human projectile weapons might be primitive by galactic standards, but at close range they were devastatingly effective around the chamber. The Caesarian women came alive, their supposed corpses rising with fluid grace. But they weren't armed with weapons, they were armed with science. Lyra activated a harmonic resonator that shattered the hegemony warriors' communication equipment. Vess triggered a localized gravitational pulse that sent 3 invaders floating helplessly toward the ceiling. Zara activated a modified scanner that overloaded the hegemony's neural implants, leaving them stunned and disoriented. "Impossible," gasped one warrior, struggling to bring his malfunctioning weapon online. "You are primitives. Weaklings. This cannot be happening." Marcus put another round center mass and stepped over the falling body. "Yeah, well, welcome to human space, moron. We specialize in impossible." Through the ship's speakers, he could hear Patrol Leader Vex screaming orders to his crew, demanding to know why their weapons weren't working and why the gravitational fields were tearing at their hulls. The beautiful part was that Marcus's modifications made the Caesarian ship appear to be something it wasn't, not just a research vessel with improvised weapons, but a completely unknown technology that defied their understanding of physics. "Signal the fleet," came Vex's translated voice over the com. "We have encountered unknown technology. Request immediate reinforcement," and the transmission cut off abruptly as Lyra activated the communication jammer Marcus had installed. Now the hegemony ships were trapped, isolated, and facing something that shouldn't exist. Marcus looked around the chamber at the faces of the Caesarian women. They were no longer prisoners. They were not helpless victims. They were brilliant, angry aliens who had just discovered that humans made very good allies when it came to evening the odds. "Phase 1 complete," Marcus announced. "Now for Phase 2. Ladies, it's time to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten people under human protection." The hegemony warriors who remained conscious on the Caesarian ship were learning a harsh lesson about human tactical doctrine. When you can't match your enemy's technology, you change the rules of engagement entirely. Marcus moved through the corridors like a force of nature, his projectile weapon dropping. Hegemony borders with methodical precision while the alien women used their scientific equipment to create chaos. Vess? Status report, Marcus called out as he reloaded behind a curved support beam. External gravitational fields are holding, came the reply through their makeshift communication system. The hegemony ships are trapped in our distortion fields, but their hulls are stronger than anticipated. It will take several more minutes to create critical structural damage. Good, Lyra, how are our guests doing? Lyra's voice carried a note of satisfaction that Marcus found deeply satisfying. The boarding parties are contained. Zara's harmonic disruptors have rendered their weapons inoperable, and most are experiencing severe disorientation from the gravitational fluctuations. Marcus peered around his cover and saw 3 hegemony warriors struggling to maintain their footing near what had been the ship's main research laboratory. Their energy weapons sparked and died every time they tried to fire, and the constantly shifting artificial gravity kept them off balance. It would have been almost comical if these weren't the same bastards who had murdered the Caesarean males and enslaved their young. He stepped out of cover and put 2 rounds into the nearest warrior's center mass, then shifted targets before the body hit the deck. The second warrior went down with a round to the chest that cracked his armored hide like an eggshell. The third tried to flee, but Vess triggered a localized gravitational pulse that slammed him into the wall hard enough to leave a dent in the biometallic surface. Marcus Kane, came Lyra's voice. Patrol Leader Vex is attempting to signal his fleet. Should we allow this? Marcus considered for a moment. Let him talk. But record everything and prepare to broadcast it on all frequencies when I give the word. Through the ship's speakers? Vex's voice came through clearly now that Lyra had modified their translation systems. Fleet Command, this is Patrol Leader Vex. We have encountered unknown technology of possible human origin. The primitive ship has been modified with gravitational weapons beyond our current understanding. Request immediate support and scientific analysis team. Marcus smiled grimly. Perfect. Nothing like having your enemies document your capabilities for you. Unknown technology, Patrol Leader? Came a new voice over the come deeper, more authoritative. Explain your situation. The research vessel we were harvesting has somehow been equipped with gravitational field manipulators that are interfering with our ship's systems. Our boarding parties report that their weapons are malfunctioning, and the prisoners appear to have been armed with harmonic disruptors that affect our neural implants. Impossible. The Caesarians are peaceful researchers, and the human appeared to be a simple salvage operator. How could they possess such technology? Marcus activated his own communication system, cutting into their frequency. Maybe because you bastards underestimated what happens when you threaten innocent people in human space. The silence that followed was deeply satisfying. Human, came Vex's voice, now carrying a note of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. You will release my warriors and surrender immediately, or we will destroy your vessel and everyone aboard. Let me explain something to you, Vex, Marcus replied, checking his ammunition count. I'm a salvage operator. That means I spend my time taking apart things that other people thought were too tough to break. Your ships? They're just bigger salvage jobs. To emphasize his point, Marcus signaled Vess to increase power to the gravitational field generators. Through the external cameras, he watched with satisfaction as the lead hegemony ship's hull began to buckle under the stress of conflicting gravitational forces. Impossible, came the fleet command voice. No primitive species possesses such technology. Here's the thing about humans, Marcus continued, moving to a new position as more gravitational pulses disabled additional hegemony warriors. We don't just use the technology we're supposed to have. We use whatever works. And right now, what works is turning your own physics against you. Lyra appeared beside him, moving with the fluid grace that seemed natural to her species. Marcus Kane, the hegemony ships are attempting to break free from our gravitational fields. Their engines are straining against the distortion matrix. How long can we hold them? With current power levels, Perhaps 10 more minutes before our auxiliary reactors begin to overload? Marcus nodded. 10 minutes was plenty of time for what he had planned next. Signal the Wanderer. Activate Emergency Beacon Protocol 7. What is Protocol 7? Lyra asked. Marcus's smile was decidedly predatory. A little surprise I've been saving for special occasions. As if on cue, his salvage ship's emergency beacon activated, sending out a distress signal on frequencies used by every major shipping company, military force, and law enforcement agency within 50 light years. But this wasn't just a call for help, it was a complete data package containing sensor recordings of the hegemony attack on the Caesarian research vessel, evidence of their slavery operations, and most importantly, the current battle. You see, Marcus explained as hegemony voices began shouting over their communication channels. Humans have this thing about documentation. We like to make sure everyone knows who the bad guys are. The fleet command voice came back, now clearly rattled. Patrol Leader Vex, extract your forces immediately. Long-range sensors detect multiple human vessels responding to that distress beacon. This operation is compromised. Extraction is impossible, Fleet Command, Vex replied, his voice strained. The gravitational fields are preventing our ships from achieving escape velocity. We are trapped. Marcus activated the external speakers, making sure his voice would carry to all 3 hegemony ships. Attention hegemony forces. You have exactly 5 minutes to surrender unconditionally. After that, I'm going to demonstrate why humans have such a bad reputation in certain circles. You are bluffing, human, came Vex's response. Your salvage vessel is no match for our patrol ships, and you cannot maintain those gravitational fields indefinitely. You're absolutely right, Marcus agreed cheerfully. I can't maintain them indefinitely, but I don't have to. He signaled Vess, who activated the final phase of their improvised weapon system. The ceremonial markers on the Caesarian ship's hull began pulsing in a new pattern, one that Marcus had programmed based on principles he'd learned from studying the gravitational anomalies that had destroyed so many ships in this sector. What are you doing? Lyra asked, studying the readings with growing amazement. Creating an artificial singularity, Marcus replied casually. Just a small one, and only for a few seconds. But it should be enough to demonstrate. What happens when human stubbornness meets alien? Physics. The space around the Caesarian ship began to distort visibly as Marcus's. Gravitational generators reached critical resonance with the vessel's biometallic hull. For a moment, the fabric of space-time itself seemed to ripple like water, and the 3 hegemony ships groaned audibly as gravitational forces, beyond their designer's imagination, began tearing at their structures. Impossible! Screamed the fleet command voice. No species has successfully weaponized gravitational singularities. Yeah, well, Marcus replied, we're new around here. We don't know what's supposed to be impossible. Through the external cameras, he watched as the lead hegemony ship's hull began to crack along stress lines that followed the gravitational distortion patterns. Emergency evacuation pods began launching from all 3 vessels as their crews realized they were facing something completely beyond their experience. Patrol Leader Vex, came the fleet command voice. Now, openly panicked, all forces are to withdraw immediately. Mark this system as interdicted pending further analysis of human capabilities. But Vex wasn't listening anymore. His ship was coming apart around him, and his warriors were trapped aboard a vessel that had somehow become a weapon that shouldn't exist. Marcus could hear him screaming orders to his crew, but the gravitational chaos had rendered their systems useless. Surrender, Marcus broadcast on all frequencies. Final offer. The response was immediate. We surrender. Human, we surrender. Please stop the gravitational distortion before our ships are destroyed. Marcus signaled Vess to reduce power gradually, allowing the artificial singularity to collapse safely. As normal space-time reasserted itself around them, the hegemony ships hung dead in the void, their hulls cracked, and their systems offline. Now, Marcus said with satisfaction, let's discuss terms. And ladies? I think it's time to show the galaxy what the Caesarian human alliance is capable of. The aftermath of the battle was almost more satisfying than the fight itself. Marcus stood in the Caesarian ship's command center, watching through the viewports as human vessels materialized from hyperspace in response to his distress beacon. 3 heavy cruisers, a merchant marine escort, and even a deep space research vessel, all flying the flags of different Earth colonies but united by the simple principle that you didn't mess with humans or their allies. Impressive response time, Lyra observed, her violet eyes studying the arriving fleet. How did they coordinate so quickly? They didn't, Marcus replied. That's the beauty of human space doctrine. When someone sends out an emergency beacon like that, every ship in range responds automatically. We sort out the details later. Admiral Chun's voice crackled through the communication system from the lead cruiser Determination. Marcus Kane, this is Admiral Sarah Chun, Earth Colonial Defense Force. Please confirm your status and the nature of the emergency. Marcus activated his transmitter. Admiral Chun, this is salvage operator Marcus Kane. Aboard the Caesarian research vessel Harmony of Stars, I have 47 rescued alien civilians and approximately 60 hegemony prisoners who need to have a very serious conversation about the laws of warfare. The silence that followed was pregnant with implications. Finally, Admiral Chun's voice returned, carefully controlled. Did you just say 60 hegemony prisoners, Mr. Kane? Yes, ma'am. Along with evidence of systematic slavery, murder, and other activities that I believe violate about 12 different interstellar treaties. Through the external cameras, Marcus could see the human fleet deploying into a defensive formation around the damaged hegemony ships. The sight filled him with a satisfaction that went deeper than mere victory. These women, these brilliant, beautiful beings who had been brutalized by bullies, were now under the protection of the most stubborn military force in known space. Marcus Kane, came Admiral Chun's voice again. We're reading massive gravitational distortions around your position. What exactly happened here? Well, Admiral, it turns out that when you combine human salvage equipment with Caesarian physics knowledge, you get some very interesting results. Vess looked up from her console, where she'd been documenting the battle's technical aspects. Admiral Chun, this is Chief Engineer Vess of the Caesarian expedition. I believe your Mr. Kane has just revolutionized gravitational warfare. Explain. Marcus gestured to Lyra, who stepped forward with the natural dignity of her species. Admiral, I am Lyra of the Caesarian Fourth House. 3 rotations ago, the hegemony attacked our research vessel without provocation. They murdered our males, enslaved our young, and held the rest of us for their entertainment. When Marcus Kane arrived, he chose to risk his life for strangers rather than flee to safety. Admiral Chun's voice carried a note of steel that Marcus recognized from his military days. I see, and the current status of the hegemony forces? Thoroughly defeated, Marcus replied. Their ships are disabled, their crews are contained, and I believe several of them are experiencing what you might call an attitude adjustment regarding human capabilities. Mr. Kane, you realize this could have significant diplomatic implications? Marcus looked around the command center at the Caesarian women, seeing the hope and determination in their luminous eyes. Yes, ma'am. I'm counting on it. Over the next hour, the human fleet established control of the area while medical teams from the research vessel Discovery came aboard to treat both the rescued Caesarians and the injured hegemony prisoners. Marcus found himself fascinated by the interaction between the species, the humans treating their former enemies with professional efficiency while the Caesarians demonstrated a grace and forgiveness that seemed to baffle the captured warriors. Patrol leader Vex, now secured in the ship's detention area with his surviving crew, had been unusually quiet since his capture. When Admiral Chun arrived to conduct preliminary interrogations, he finally spoke. Admiral, Vex said through the translator, we were told that humans were primitive savages who thought only of personal profit. We were told you would never risk yourselves for alien species you barely knew. Admiral Chun studied the hegemony commander with cold eyes. Who told you this? Our intelligence services. Our leaders. Everyone in the hegemony knows that humans are dangerous because of your violence and selfishness, not because of any noble qualities. Marcus, who had been listening from the corner, stepped forward. Sounds like your intelligence services need better intelligence. But how did you modify the Caesarean vessel so quickly? Vex asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Our scientists say it should be impossible to weaponize gravitational fields without massive installations and unlimited power sources. Lyra answered before Marcus could speak. Because you do not understand what humans truly are. You see their crude weapons and utilitarian vessels and assume they are primitives. But Marcus Kane took our theoretical research and turned it into practical weapons in a matter of hours. Not because he is savage, but because he is brilliant. And stubborn, added Zara from across the compartment. Do not forget stubborn. Admiral Chun turned to Marcus. Mr. Kane, I need to understand what you've accomplished here. The gravitational weapon system you improvised, how replicable is it? With proper equipment and trained personnel? Very replicable. The Caesarians did most of the heavy lifting. I just provided the inspiration and some creative engineering. Vess stepped forward carrying a datapad filled with technical specifications. Admiral, if I may, the human approach to technology is ... unique. Where we see theoretical limitations, they see engineering challenges. Marcus Kane's modifications violate several principles of proper gravitational field manipulation. But they work because he was willing to ignore conventional wisdom. Explain. For example, Vess continued, standard doctrine says you cannot create stable gravitational fields using biometallic hull resonance because the harmonic frequencies would tear the ship apart. Marcus Kane decided to use that destructive potential as a feature rather than avoiding it as a bug. Admiral Chun looked between Marcus and the Caesarian engineer. Are you telling me that Mr. Kane invented a new class of weapons by deliberately ignoring safety protocols? Yes, Lyra said with something that might have been pride. It is very human. The interrogation continued for several more hours, during which it became clear that the hegemony had been systematically targeting peaceful species throughout this sector of space. Their intelligence had identified humans as potential threats, but they'd completely misunderstood the nature of that threat. They expected us to be territorial predators, Admiral Chun explained to Marcus privately. Instead, they encountered something they couldn't comprehend, a species that gets more dangerous when defending others than when defending themselves. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now? Now we make sure this never happens again. Admiral Chun's expression was grim but determined. The Caesarian-Human alliance you mentioned? I think it's time to make that official. Later, as the human fleet prepared to escort the rescued Caesarians to safety, Marcus found himself alone with Lyra in the observation lounge of the Determination. Through the viewport, they could see the damaged hegemony ships being towed away by human vessels. Their crews bound for war crimes tribunals that would send a message throughout the galaxy. Marcus Kane, Lyra said softly, my people will never forget what you did for us. But I must ask, why did you risk everything for strangers? Marcus considered the question, watching the stars wheel past outside. Because it was the right thing to do. And because someone has to stand up to bullies or they just keep getting worse. Lyra moved closer, her presence warm and comforting in the observation lounge's soft lighting. Is that truly the only reason? Marcus looked at her, this brilliant, beautiful being who had trusted him when she had every reason not to, and found himself smiling. Well, there might have been another reason or two, such as? Such as the fact that I couldn't stand the thought of someone hurting you, Marcus admitted. Any of you. You're too remarkable to lose to bastards like the hegemony. For a long moment they stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars and considering the future that stretched ahead of them. The galaxy had just learned that humans made very dangerous enemies and very loyal friends. The hegemony's reign of terror in this sector was over, and a new alliance had been born from courage and impossible physics. Marcus Kane, Lyra said finally, I believe the galaxy is about to become a very different place. Marcus nodded. thinking of all the other peaceful species who might be suffering under hegemony oppression. And all the human ships now heading out to do something about it. Yeah, he said with satisfaction. I think you're right. 6 months later, the Caesarian homeworld of Lysis Prime buzzed with activity that would have been unthinkable before the hegemony crisis. Human engineers worked alongside Caesarian scientists in massive orbital installations, combining Earth's practical approach to problem-solving with the aliens' theoretical brilliance to create technologies that neither species could have developed alone. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Joint Research Station Harmony, watching construction crews put the finishing touches on the latest gravitational field generator. These weren't weapons, they were terraforming tools designed to help damaged worlds recover from hegemony exploitation. It was a much better use for physics-defying technology than blowing up ships, though Marcus had to admit he missed the excitement sometimes. Admiring your handiwork? Admiral Chen asked, joining him at the viewport. She'd been promoted to head of the Joint Human-Caesarian Defense Initiative, a position that kept her busy mediating between two species that approached problems in completely different ways. Our handiwork, Marcus corrected. I just provided the creative vandalism. Vess and her people did the real work. Through the transparent aluminum, they could see Vess herself directing the installation of a new quantum resonance chamber. The Caesarian engineer had become something of a celebrity in human space. Her papers on improvised gravitational manipulation required reading at every major engineering school. She'd also developed an unfortunate habit of starting sentences with, as Marcus Kane would say, before proposing solutions that violated several laws of physics. Speaking of Vess, Admiral Chung continued, her latest report suggests that we'll have the new defense grid online within 2 weeks. Any hegemony ship that enters Allied space will find themselves facing gravitational fields that can crush their hulls like tin cans. Good, Marcus replied. Maybe now we can focus on rebuilding instead of fighting. The hegemony war, as historians were already calling it, had lasted only 4 months. Once word spread about what had happened to Patrol Leader Vex's forces, other peaceful species had begun reaching out to the Human-Caesarian Alliance for protection. The hegemony had found themselves facing not just 2 species, but a growing coalition of civilizations who were tired of being bullied. The war had ended when human and allied forces reached the hegemony capital world and demonstrated what happened when you combine Caesarian gravitational theory with human military doctrine. The artificial singularity that had consumed 3 hegemony battle stations in 30 seconds had convinced their leadership that continued aggression was inadvisable. Marcus, came a familiar voice from across the observation deck. Marcus turned to see Lyra approaching, her silver-blue skin seeming to glow in the station's soft lighting. Over the past months, she'd become the unofficial ambassador between their species, her natural grace and intelligence making her perfect for diplomatic work. The council meeting is about to begin, she continued. They're waiting for your input on the Centauri proposal. Marcus sighed. Politics had never been his favorite part of salvage work, and now that he was officially the human representative for joint technology development, he had to attend more meetings than he'd ever wanted. What's the Centauri situation again? The hegemony had enslaved the native population and strip-mined most of their planets, Admiral Chun explained. The survivors are asking for help with ecological restoration, and they want us to use the gravitational terraforming arrays, Lyra added. It would be the largest application of our joint technology to date. Marcus nodded slowly. The Centauri system had been one of the hegemony's most exploited territories, its beautiful garden worlds reduced to barren wastelands by industrial mining operations. Restoring those planets would require precisely controlled gravitational fields to reshape their geography and atmosphere. Exactly the kind of large-scale engineering project that the Alliance had been designed for. How long would it take? He asked. Conservative estimates suggest 5 years per planet, Admiral Chun replied. But Vess thinks we can cut that in half if we use some of your more Creative approaches to conventional limitations. Marcus couldn't help but smile. In the months since the battle, his reputation for ignoring safety protocols had somehow transformed from a liability into a valuable asset. Human and Caesarean engineers now routinely asked themselves, what would Marcus do? When faced with supposedly impossible problems, they made their way to the station's main conference room, where representatives from dozens of species had gathered to discuss the Alliance's growing list of humanitarian projects. Marcus took his seat between Lyra and Admiral Chun, noting how the other delegates had learned to pay attention when humans and Caesareans worked together. The meeting itself was fairly routine reports on refugee resettlement, updates on captured hegemony technology, proposals for new joint research initiatives. But what struck Marcus was how natural it all seemed now. 6 months ago, most of these species had never heard of humans. Now they were treating Earth's colonies as trusted allies and technological partners. The Andorian Collective would like to request assistance with orbital platform construction, announced a delegate whose skin seemed to be made of living crystal. Our engineers lack the expertise to create stable gravitational anchors for large-scale installations. We can have a technical team ready within 2 weeks, Admiral Chun replied. Chief Engineer Vess has been working on modular gravitational anchoring systems specifically for that type of construction. And so it went for the next 2 hours. Species after species presenting problems that would have been unsolvable just months before, only to receive practical solutions from the Alliance's growing technical expertise. Marcus found himself thinking about how different the galaxy had become since that day when he'd stumbled across a ship full of prisoners after the meeting. Marcus found himself alone with Lyra on the station's recreation deck. The artificial gravity here was set to Earth normal, which meant Lyra had to concentrate to maintain her naturally graceful movement. She claimed it was good exercise, but Marcus suspected she just enjoyed the challenge. I received word from the Caesarean homeworld today, Lyra said as they walked through the station's gardens. The Council of Houses has voted to establish permanent colonies in human space. Really? That's a big step. Indeed. My people have never been particularly interested in expansion before. We preferred our research and our peaceful exploration of the galaxy. She paused beside a flowering bush that had been brought from her homeworld. But recent events have shown us the value of having strong allies. Marcus studied her profile in the garden's soft lighting. Over the past months, he'd grown to appreciate not just her intelligence and grace, but her quiet strength and determination. The woman who had trusted a strange human with her life had become one of the galaxy's most effective diplomatic voices. Lyra, he said carefully, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. She turned to face him, those luminous violet eyes meeting his with an expression he couldn't quite read. Yes? When this all started, you said your people didn't understand humans, that you expected us to be violent primitives interested only in profit. What changed your mind? Lyra was quiet for a long moment, considering her answer. Do you remember what you said when we first met? When I told you about the hegemony's brutality. I said they sounded like jackasses. She laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Yes, but it was more than that. You were angry not because the hegemony had threatened you, but because they had hurt people you had never met. That was when I realized that our intelligence about your species was fundamentally flawed. How so? We had been told that humans were dangerous because of your capacity for violence. But we learned that you are dangerous because of your capacity for compassion. You will fight harder to protect others than most species will fight to protect themselves. Marcus felt warmth spreading through his chest. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It is a remarkable thing, Lyra replied softly. And it is why the galaxy will never be the same. They stood together in the garden, surrounded by plants from a dozen different worlds, watching through the transparent dome as human and alien ships moved through space with easy familiarity. The sight filled Marcus with a satisfaction that went deeper than any salvage operation or successful rescue. So what happens now? He asked. Lyra smiled, and the expression seemed to light up the entire garden. Now we build something better, together. As if to emphasize her point, the station's communication system chimed with an incoming message from the frontier. Another species requesting alliance assistance with a hegemony-damaged world. Another chance to prove that the galaxy was big enough for everyone to live in peace. Marcus looked at Lyra, seeing the future reflected in her violet eyes. It was going to be a busy few decades, but he couldn't think of anyone he'd rather be busy with. Well then, he said with a grin, let's get to work. The galaxy had indeed become a very different place. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Kane was exactly where he belonged, standing beside remarkable people who were making the universe a better place. One impossible problem at a time. In the distance, the stars shone with the light of hope and possibility,